Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Unexpected Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we are back with another guest episode, and I'm actually super excited for this because it's a topic that we haven't talked about before, and I think it's really, really interesting. So, before we jump in, I'm going to let Sandra introduce herself, tell you all about her, and then we will jump into gallery systems and how you can use them for your clients. So, do you want to start off by introducing yourself?
Of course. I am Sandra. I am a photographer and systems strategist. I started my photography business 11 and a half years ago, focusing primarily on weddings and families. And then a couple of years ago, I started another business helping photographers with system strategy. So, getting their systems and workflows and automation set up in their businesses so that things can be simplified and streamlined in a really sustainable way so that they can then take their energy and focus it where they need it most, whether that be behind their camera, taking care of their health, their family, whatever that responsibility might look like. Because, yeah, we shouldn't have to spend every second behind our computer. We're allowed to have lives as well as being entrepreneurs.
I think we could all benefit from a little cleaner systems in our business to make everything a little bit easier. But today we're going to talk about your gallery system. And before we go into some of the other questions I have about it because it's really cool, do you want to just explain a little bit about what it is and what you kind of have included in it?
Yeah, of course. So I was really thinking about ways that I could utilize the tech and the services that I'm already paying for in different ways because we can all think of like an endless list of things that we are paying for, and some of them do the same things. And like, I definitely have been totally guilty where, like, for a little while, I was using Trello and I was using Asana, and like, I was using all these things that realistically did the same thing. And
Hmm.
so that was a total waste of my effort, my time, my money. And so I really started trying to think of like, how can I utilize the things that I have in a different way? And another thing that I did was, or that I should say I do in my business, is I'm always listening to questions that my clients are asking me and things that people are posting online and things like that, and seeing how I can use that to my advantage. And so, one question that I was getting asked all the time by my family clients, by my engagement clients, is where do we go to get our photos taken? And I think we can, like, every photographer out there that does any sort of portrait can think of one park in their local area that is like the go
Hmm.
to, that everybody's like, oh, we'll just go there for photos because it's really nice. And that park happens to be 30 seconds away from my house where I live. And so, as great as it is to know a location so well, after being there a few hundred times, you get really tired of taking photos in the same spots over and
Hmm.
over again. And so I kind of used these two things with wanting to serve my clients and utilize the tech that I'm already paying for. I decided to create a locations gallery inside my gallery service. So I use PickTime for my photography business, and I obviously was using that to deliver the photos to my clients after their
Hmm.
sessions were already done. And I do have some blog posts that I've created for locations in the city, which is really great for SEO. But to send someone all of my blog links for every single location that I've posted about would be really overwhelming. And I'll still have to do a little bit of back and forth with them to figure out what exactly they're looking for from their location. Like, do I send them blogs that are locations that are parks? Do I send them
Hmm.
some that is like, the historic buildings that we have in the city and things like that? So rather than having to do all that back and forth, which I will avoid at all costs, we have so many, like, so much time can be lost emailing back and
Yeah.
forth. So I decided to create this locations gallery. And it was the same kind of idea of those blog posts. But inside this gallery, I now have a different folder for every location that I've taken photos at in and around my area. And inside those individual folders are, of course, photos that I've taken there to give people a really good, like, visual representation of what each location looks like. But I also try to include photos that are taken at different times of day and different times of year so that they know exactly what it is that they're going to be getting. If anybody lives in an area where you don't have access to a beach, you may be very familiar with the scenario where you have clients that are sending you photos they've seen online that they love so much. And these were clearly taken on the beach at sunset, and you're by a forest, and like, it's impossible to get that light with these trees. And so this helps me kind of avoid that situation too, where I'm able to show them exactly what these locations are going to look like and help set their expectations before they're actually showing up for their session.
I think this is such a cool idea because it is something that, even the photographers that we've asked or we've worked with have been asked a lot, and like we've written blog posts on it or included, links on their website to some of their favorite spots. If you are doing anything besides anything that has to do with picking a location. I mean, I know it kind of a little bit in weddings, but that's going to be a whole different ball game with venues and everything. But like engagement photos, couples photos, family photos, I feel like odds are you're going to get asked the question, where should I take them? Where are the best places to go? And having this full kind of system of like, here's everything. Here's all the different options that I've been to. Here's all the different places you can go. And I love that you put the different times of day, the different seasons, because I feel like it's one thing to be like, okay, this looks great in the middle of the day during the summer, but what about the winter? Like, am I
Mhm.
in a place where it snows? Is it going to be super sunny and great weather? Like, is it going to be really cloudy? What's the vibe going to be for that? So I think that this is such a great way to, like you said, get some of your time back, not being like, okay, well, if we're going in this season, it's going to be this, this, this. You got to worry about this. Just like, look, here's what it looks like. All the different seasons, all the different times of day. You want urban, you want a forest one, you want a park one. Like, here you go. You want to be out by a lake. I think it's feels like something that is so like, duh, why am I not doing that anyway? But it's gonna save you so much time in the long run because you're not, like you said, you're not doing that back and forth. You're not being like, okay, well, what vibe are we going for? What kind of colors do you want to do to match the? And like, I feel like it feels like such a duh. Why have I not been doing this anywhere type of idea?
Totally. And I felt that way when I first started using it too. I was like, why did I not do this sooner? I'd been thinking about it for so long, but like any photographer can relate to the idea of sitting down to have to go through all of your photos
Oh
to
yeah.
pull them. It's such a huge, tedious task that, like, I'm sure many people listening can relate that we're just going to put that off and put that off and put that off until we finally decide to do it. And so that's definitely what happened with this gallery. And I was kicking myself afterwards, like, why did I not do this sooner?
Hmm.
Because it is great to, like you said, like set those expectations about what it's going to look like during different times of year. Any way that you can set expectations ahead of time is always going to serve you and the client in the best way possible, because if they don't know what they're getting into, they're not going to be happy with their photos in the end a lot of the time. And so that helps to avoid that situation. And then something else that I also include in these folders as well that I think is really important is that I've created some graphics in Canva for each of them that list out important details about the location. So if it's not an accessible location, I want to make sure that that information is given to them. If there's any sort of fees for parking or anything like that, I want to make sure that information is in there. And then if it's just straight up like not a good location to use during specific parts of the year, I will flat out tell them so that their wheels don't start turning and think like,
Hmm.
oh, what time of year was this? Maybe we can make it work. So that has definitely been really helpful as well.
I think that's a great idea too because you don't want to have that kind of disappointment of like, oh, I really wanted
Mhm.
that, but like it's not accessible, or like you really can't go in the winter because you're gonna be thigh deep in snow, and that's not really what is conducive to taking engagement photos or whatever it might be. So I think setting those expectations, but also not getting them excited about something and being like, yeah, that's actually not possible unless you want to wait another 6 months or
Mhm.
anything like that. I think that's a great idea. And you also, so you talked about how you put it off because of course, every photographer, like their worst nightmare is having to go through and pick photos from the hundreds of galleries and the thousands of photos. Now that you have it set up, do you update it a lot? Do you add more photos to it? Like every time you're at a location, do you go, okay, let me take these like five or so photos and put them in? Or is it more so if you do it at a new time of day, a new season, or like a new location, that's where you update it?
I usually go through and update it at the end of the year or early next year, kind of when I'm working on my, like, updating my portfolio for my website and things
Mm,
like that. But I will pop in and make adjustments as needed if something about the location has changed. So we had one location in the city that we used to be able to go and use for photos all the time that was downtown. But since they I will say it was private property. We all knew it was private property. It just wasn't enforced. So you just apologize later, right? So they've decided to start enforcing the fact that it is private property and we have to now pay a fee to do photos there and actually rent the space, which is fair. I totally respect their
Mhm.
business and their property. So I want to make sure that that information is given to my clients because they could be on my website and see photos that have been taken there for years and expect to be able to get their photos taken there as well. And then they would then be hit with me saying, hey, sorry, you can't actually have that spot, or you now have to pay, but it's not me that's enforcing that. All of these things, I want to make sure that we're avoiding any hurdles or as many hurdles as possible leading up to the session. And so that's one way that I'll go in and kind of make adjustments throughout the year if I notice that something has changed.
And I think that's important because, I mean, let's be honest, all of us love having all the information up front. We don't want any things to like come up or hidden fees or things where you're like, oh, that's great. And you're like, okay, it's now going to be X amount of dollars extra to do this. So I think that's great to keep that updated and make sure that, when people are looking at it, they have all the facts before they're like, okay, that's where I want to go. I want to go at this time of day. Like, I think that's such a valuable thing and things that clients are going to appreciate because it makes them feel
Mm-hmm.
like informed and part of the process. And they're like, okay, nothing's, hidden. You're not trying to pull anything over on me. Like, I have all of the information. So I absolutely love that. And kind of thinking about your clients, how have they, since you've set it up, how have they kind of reacted to it? Do they, love it? Is there anything that you've kind of heard from them since you started implementing this?
Yeah, I've definitely gotten great feedback from people. It takes a lot of stress off of their shoulders having to think about what places to go to, especially if it's their first time ever having photos done before. They have
Mhm.
absolutely no idea what to do. So they can ask some friends, but maybe it's a young family and their friends don't have kids yet. And they're the first ones that are kind of starting into this adventure. And so there's all different kinds of scenarios that can lead into people not knowing where to go for photos, or maybe they've done photos before and they just really didn't love the location that they were at. So many different options. And so when I give them this, they don't have to use it. It just takes a weight off of their shoulders so that they don't have to worry about trying to figure out where they want to go. And one thing that I absolutely love is when I take clients to a set or to a location for their session that they've never been to before, and they are walking around and they're just admiring it and they love it, and they're saying how they didn't even know that this place existed and they can't wait to come back and explore.
Mhm.
So that's been a really cool kind of like unexpected thing about sending these galleries is it benefits me because I get to take photos in more fun creative places instead of going to that same park over and over again. But it's also giving my clients a way to explore the city that they live in, check out places that they've never been before, and yeah, like I said, taking some of that stress off their plate and having to worry about where do we go for photos.
I think that's such a like added bonus of it because I know personally, like we move around a lot and there are so many things in every city that we've lived in that we still have not seen. We have no idea it exists. Every once in a while we get a video and we'll be like, oh my God, that's so cool. We need to go like add that to the list of things to go do. And I feel like especially when you're looking at, family photos, once you have kids, it's all, you kind of end up in the routine of you're going to the same places. They like it. So you're not going to, change things up and throw in a whole
Mm-hmm.
bunch of new things. So there's so much of your own city that you've just never seen before. And, you might not know that it even exists. You might not know if it's a good place to go or if it's even worth going. But, the second you see it on that list, I'm like, oh, this is actually really cool. It's family friendly or it's going to be really great, intimate vibe for engagement photos or whatever it might be. It kind of flips that and you're like, okay, well, this is really cool. It fits exactly what my idea is, and it kind of opens your eyes to like a whole new thing. So I think it's a great way to not only find, a great place to do photos, but also learn more about, where you live and what's around and kind of open your eyes to everything that's, in this great place that you actually live in.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's also kind of like the flip side of it too, where someone, our clients all have their own ideas a lot of the time. Not everybody
Mhm.
comes to us asking, what should we do? And so, every now and then you have that one client who comes to you with an idea for a location that's not great. It's going to be terrible lighting or whatever the case may be. And so this is a really great way for you to kind of respond to that in a positive, helpful, educational way that you can give photo examples and say, hey, Don't recommend it. Here's why. Take a
Hmm.
look at these photos from this time of year versus this time of year and tell me which one appeals to you more. And you can kind of guide them through the process that way instead of just coming in, straight up saying like that location's going to suck, or just going and doing the photos anyway, winging it, hoping for the best, and nobody ends up loving them in the end.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a big thing of, we can think, I know even when we're looking at doing, brand photos or anything, we're like, "Oh, this might be a great place." And then we actually look at it or we like talk with our photographers and like, it might not actually be the best place to do it." But when you're, just first looking in, you're like, "Okay, well, it's there. It looks nice, it might be great, but there's so much more that goes into what actually makes, a good end product photo than just I like this place or I would want to be
Mm-hmm.
here." So I think, as we're picking locations, we don't necessarily think of it from the photography side of how is this gonna look. So having that, experience coming in and be like, okay, well, this is what it might look like. It might not be the best. It might not fit the, vision that you have for this session, but here's some other locations that might be similar to it that do actually do that we can do instead. And I think, like you said, not just being, no, that's not gonna, like, that does nothing. Just saying no does nothing for them, and it doesn't help, instill any confidence in them that this is gonna be a great session. But if you're like, oh, maybe not this one, but here's all these other options, they're like, oh, okay, this is perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally used to be the photographer that would get a suggestion from a client and I knew it wasn't great, but I would just wing it. I'd go and I'd make the best of it and just kind of work with what I had. But then I would go to edit the photos and I'm just like, this is not my best work. I'm not loving this. And so I had to really get comfortable with kind of reminding myself and reminding my clients that I'm the expert. Like
Hmm.
I've been doing this for over 11 years now and I have been asked, "Are you sure we're going to have enough light?" and things like that 1.5 million times. And so I always just want to ensure my clients that I absolutely know what I'm doing when it comes to location and the lighting. I don't want them to feel like they're being taken advantage of
Hmm.
or like their photos aren't going to turn out. And I find that any way that we can visually put those worries at ease is going to go such a long way in making sure that it's a really great experience for your clients from start to finish.
Absolutely. We have to, as hard as it can be to have that confidence of like, I am the expert, I know what I'm talking about, and I know this is going to work out really well for you. Sometimes it's hard to voice that to our clients
Mm-hmm.
and be like, no, like, trust me, this is going to be better. So I know you talked about how this is saving you time because now you're just like, look, it's all in one place. Here you go. Here's all of them. It sounds like this might be, helping you get better pictures and better results for your clients. Is there anything else that this has kind of helped you do since creating it, or kind of helped when it's looking at the client side of their, end product?
It really helped me as I was putting the gallery together. It helped me kind of really stop and think about why I liked certain locations, what times of day I preferred to take the photos in versus what times of day might be, more popular for my clients and things like that. And so I kind of now am approaching my locations a lot more intentionally than I was before,
Mm.
especially ones that I've been working in, like that park that's 30 seconds away from my house. I hate it 90% of the year because it's like I'm just there all the time, but in the fall it's beautiful. I am just a couple hours outside of Toronto and a couple hours outside of Detroit, so I'm sure my Canadian accent has peeked through a little bit during this interview. But we get really beautiful colors there in the fall, and I love going there because not only is it gorgeous, but I know the spot like the back of my hand. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter what kind of weather we have, what time of day it is. I know exactly what spots to go to and what I'm going to be dealing with when I get there. And so creating this gallery has really given me the ability to approach every location that I'm working at in the same way. And then there's always going to be locations that I haven't worked at before, and if they're really awesome and I want to go back, I'll just add them into my gallery. But for the most part, I have enough of a variety in there that
Hmm.
people, if they don't have a spot in mind already, they pick one from my gallery, and everybody is super happy with that. So, yeah, it's just kind of like gave me the time to think exactly why I liked certain locations, why I didn't like certain locations, what the benefits were to different times of year and things like that. And I think having taking the time to approach every aspect of your business like that is super important. Knowing exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it will give you so much confidence as a business owner and as a photographer, and then you're able to relay that confidence to your clients, and then they know that they're in good hands.
And I think that's a really interesting, point and perspective to look at it through, of not just like, here's a place that looks pretty and that you can take your photos at, but like, why is this actually a good place?
Mhm.
And I think it's important because as you're like, you might have clients that are like, well, I don't know, like, is this the right place? Why should I go here? Or like, why is it a good choice for this? If you're like, well, look, this might be a great option because XYZ, it's a great place to be, and it's going to be a little more private, or there's going to be great colors, or whatever it might be. Again, just kind of that like enforcing that fact that you are the expert, you know what you're talking about. You're not just giving them something because you're like, oh, it'll look pretty. And that's the only
Mhm.
explanation that you get. I think a lot of people aren't necessarily coming to you with a kind of air of like, I want you to like convince me, or I think you're wrong, but they're just like, I'm curious why this is a good choice and like what makes it a good choice. And just being able to say, hey, here's why it's a good choice, here's why it's a great option for you, is all they need. And they're like, all right, perfect, let's do that. Like, yes, I'm in.
Yeah, exactly. It instills confidence in them, and just knowing that they're in good hands, that you know what they're doing, or that you know what you're doing, and that they are going to be happy with their photos in the end. And I always tell my clients, I actually have this in my email marketing and in some blog posts as well. I tell them that they deserve so much better than a pretty location, because every park is gorgeous. If
Mm-hmm.
like you're a nature nut like me, every tree is beautiful, every flower is beautiful, but like you were saying before, not everything is beautiful for a photo. Not
Mm-hmm.
everything makes a good location for a photo. And so, yeah, using these tools is definitely a great way to emphasize a good location versus just a pretty location.
Exactly. So if anyone's listening and they're like, okay, this is a perfect idea, I want to do this, do you have any tips for people as they start to create these galleries, or any kind of like, here's what you can do first, or even how you kind of like set it up on your own? I know there's probably plenty of people listening that are on pick time and can do it and set it up. Do you have any tips for anyone listening?
Yeah, absolutely. If it's something that you are wanting to start with, like right away, I want to get this going because you've got lots of portraits coming up that you know this is going to be hugely helpful for you. Start building it on the go. Every time you are uploading photos for a client, pop a couple over into a separate folder or separate gallery, sorry, and start building that locations gallery on the go, especially if you have been working in some areas that you really love taking photos in, and
Mm-hmm.
you know that they're going to be coming in handy as the seasons change. And then it also comes in handy as well if you are doing mini sessions. So I do mini sessions seasonally, and so I make sure that I have those up and running leading into my promo time. So I'm going to be updating my fall mini section of the gallery for the end of August as I start launching, like heavily launching everything for my October mini sessions. And so, yeah, I definitely recommend building it on the go if it's something that you think would be really helpful in your business right now. If it's not something that you really have the capacity for to add to your plate right now, then save it for when you are in off season and have a little bit more space to spend some time at your computer. And then one thing that I don't necessarily have a tip on how to cull your photos down to just a few. I don't know if any photographer has really figured that one out yet, especially when we're having to cull for ourselves versus
Mm-hmm.
having to cull for our clients. But what I did is I just started going through my photos because I built this gallery all at once instead of doing it on the go. But I went through and just started pulling all of my favorite photos together, and then I uploaded all of those into their individual folders. And then I kind of looked through and it was like, this this location had 4 or 5 pictures and then this one had 30. And so I had to kind of like go through and pick out ones that varied. So
Mhm.
trying to show a nice variety of the different times of year, different times of day, and trying to kind of not worry too much about necessarily the emotions that were being shown and things like that. This gallery is not meant to be a portfolio
Mhm.
where I'm trying to set expectations of necessarily the type of photos that they're going to be getting in terms of candids and poses and things like that. It's really to show them the location and what the
Mhm.
light looks like and what the foliage looks like in the background and things like that. So that will definitely help you kind of pare down and get down to the like just the basics, because you really don't need, especially like if it's an area, we have magnolia trees in my city that I take photos of every spring. There's 3 trees. I don't need 30 photos of those 3 trees. Like 5 or 6 is plenty to give people an idea of what the space looks like. But yeah, just kind of being intentional with things like that will help you put together that gallery a little bit more quickly.
That's such a great point too, because at this point too, these people have already booked with you. So they know that they
Mm-hmm.
like your work. They understand kind of the range of what you can do, what their photos might look like. So this isn't a, gallery I'm putting together to sell myself. This is a gallery of like you can go to this park and here's what the light is going to look like in the fall or what the trees are going to look like in the fall. And I think kind of approaching it with that mindset instead of a what are my prettiest photos, because the prettiest photos might all kind of like you might find that it's certain angles or poses or anything like look really well with family photos, but that if every single gallery is that and they're like okay great but what about everything else, it can feel a little repetitive. So I think approaching it with that angle of how can I show the variety of the location itself, not necessarily the people in the photos,
Mm-hmm.
is really great. And I also like what you said about just if you want to start now, just pull a couple photos every time. I think even if you're not necessarily going to share it with anyone yet, having that starting to build it can make it seem less daunting because you're not like, all
Mm-hmm.
right, I'm just stacking more and more and more and more galleries that I have to go through. Like just start now, pull a couple of photos, put it aside, and then they'll already be done. So you're not going through 170, you're going through 160. Like it can seem a little less daunting, even though it's still a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have somebody that has like an impartial eye that you can have, outsource that job to, that can be really helpful as well. Because my husband, God love him, but he is not a creative person. And so when he looks at photos, he's seeing my work in an entirely different capacity
Mm-hmm.
than I am. And so if I had taken like given him the galleries to look through and said to him like, what photos do you think are really similar here? He is going to definitely like pull out photos that I would not pair these ones together, whatever the case may be. So that's another way that if you're just feeling really stuck, like just get somebody who's not a photographer, or even a photographer that's just not you who took the
Mm-hmm.
photos, to go through and kind of like sort out which ones are similar, which ones really feature different aspects of the location and things like that.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's really hard to like detach yourself from the work and take a step
Mm-hmm.
back and like look at it with new eyes. So just being like, here, you've never seen these photos before. Which ones do I need to use? You're gonna kind of see it in a whole new light and be like, okay, perfect. This is a great gallery. We got it. That's perfect. So I love that.
Yeah, totally.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all about this. Again, I think this is like a genius idea, and I think it's perfect for anyone who's doing these kind of sessions where there are different locations they get asked about a ton, and I think it's going to save everyone a lot of time and energy once they're set up. But if people want to connect with you, see your work, anything like that, where can they find you online, on social media, anywhere like that?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. My system strategy business, you can find me on Instagram at simply Sandra Yvonne. And then if you want to check out my photography business, that's at Life is Beautiful London. I'm also on TikTok at simply Sandra Yvonne, and Threads, which honestly, Threads is currently my favorite social media platform. That's actually how I had connected with Jesse. It's just so much fun over there. I love it. So, but there's no, like I share a few honeybook tips and things like that here and there, but it's mostly just nonsense and me talking about my favorite Bravo shows and things like that. So if that's your vibe, come and hang out over on Threads. And then you can, of course, find me on my website, simply sandrayvonne.ca. And I have a podcast as well called Keeping It Candid, where I talk all about being a photographer, the ins and outs, and systems, strategies, and things like that to help you simplify your business.
Amazing. Well, we will link all of those down in the description. You should definitely go check them out. But thank you again so much for coming on and sharing all of this with us today. And we'll catch you in the next episode.
Thanks for having me.